President Trump has arrived in Beijing for the highly anticipated meeting with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping.
So I really look very much forward to our discussion. It's a big discussion. There are those that say this is maybe the biggest summit ever.
Mark Logan's with us, former Conservative MP from Ballymena, also Vice Chair of Parliament's China Group. Mark, thank you very much for being with us.
Morning.
How significant is this meeting, and what about all of the global factors around it that kind of maybe change how things are dealt with, particularly from Trump's position? Do you think he's in a slightly weaker position coming into this?
Well, I think, Trump at the very top there, when he was speaking with President Xi, said that this is, the biggest summit ever. And I do think that that's not just histrionics, that this, to me, as someone who's watched China and its rise over the last 20 plus years, this is the biggest show. Indeed, it's the only show in time when it comes to politics and geopolitics. Of course, the meeting itself was scheduled to take place originally a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. And as you've rightly pointed out, because of issues primarily in the Middle East with Iran, this has been pushed back until now in middle of May. These other issues, as you mentioned, some of the big T's that are going to be the talking points both today and tomorrow morning in Beijing. Of course, you have tech, you have Tehran by way of Iran, you have tariffs, you have trade, and also Taiwan. And these are all going to be issues which both of these countries' leaders are going to be talking about in great depth.
Yeah, Beijing is keen to push the US on Taiwan. Do you think that is possibly their biggest concern?
Yeah, well, so if you look at the Chinese embassy in the United States, just before Air Force One took off from DC, they actually put out a 4 red lines, and at the very top of the 4 things they were pointing out was actually on Taiwan. So this, for the Chinese, is an internal issue. It's also one of their core national interests. And people are very keen to see, Trump, especially when you look back to his first term. Remember that back in 2017, very early on, he actually made a call to the president at that time of Taiwan, and there was a great pushback from the Chinese. But he seems to have, in this second term, he's taken more of a kind of soft stance when it comes to Taiwan vis-a-vis the Chinese. And so there's a lot of people looking right now. The key is it sounds like semantics, but it is all in the wording, where up until now, the United States policy on Taiwan has been very much that they don't support this unilateral change for independence, but the Chinese are really hoping that Trump will maybe come across to the Chinese way of looking at this and to actually to come out and say we oppose Taiwan independence.
In terms of trade, what do you think will actually be achieved?
I think a lot. So again, this is also a big step change, because you'll have seen from the first Trump administration through to the Biden administration that there was proactive steps to decouple, to de-risk. But if you look at the last couple of days in the run-up to this visit, there's been a big announcements, of course, of the CEOs and founders of those big American companies coming out to China. I mean, it's incredible when you look at the sheer money involved in this visit. You have just Jensen Huang, for example, NVIDIA.
Elon Musk.
And Elon Musk. I mean, it was just announced yesterday that NVIDIA now has a bigger market capitalization than every economy in the world, bar China and the United States. And that's just one of the 20, 30 companies that have come out with Trump. So the commercial side of things is incredibly important. I mean, Trump...
But they are competitors, sorry to cut across you. They are competitors, aren't they, though? So how do you do a deal that benefits everybody, but at the same time, if you like, keeps America on top?
Well, I mean, so both are striving for dominance. And if you think, like, from the Chinese perspective, there is a saying, right? It's Yishan Burong Erhu, which basically says that there cannot be 2 tigers on the mountain. So both of these, they are strategic competitors. There's no doubt about that. But right now, how it's been managed, when you look at the semiconductor, the chips that go into AI and all this mass compute, is that up until now, America hasn't allowed NVIDIA to sell its highest standard microchips. Have allowed the sort of a little bit more subpar chips to be sold to China. So that's been how they've negotiated, how they've navigated the relationship so far. But, America, Trump is serious about deals. I mean, Boeing, they want to sign massive deals with China. There's also soybeans. You've got the Cargill company from the United States out there. And obviously Elon Musk and Tim Cook from Apple.
Yeah, very quickly, Mark, because I want to ask you about the political situation in the UK. Can China change the dial on Iran, or do you think they're not going to really go there?
I think that definitely both China and the United States together hold the cards when it comes to Iran. I think that's where you'll see the G2 re-emerging, that idea that all the big decisions, how the world will look in the next 5, 10, 20 years will be decided by Washington and by Beijing. So, I mean, China does have a role to play. Now, it doesn't want to get sucked into the Iran conflict in any big shape or form because they do see it as the United States problem. The United States have this as a choice of war, but they are through back channels, through diplomacy. You even saw the foreign minister from Iran was in Beijing last week. So China has huge influence, and Trump knows that, and he'll be hoping that they can lean on China to open up the Strait of Hormuz.
Certain amount of a game of cards being played. Also, exactly the same in that sense in the UK at the moment in terms of what's happening with the leadership of the Labour Party and who will be the next Prime Minister of the UK if Keir Starmer can't hang on. What is your view of the whole thing? Because you were a Conservative MP during the time of Boris Johnson, of Liz Truss, multiple PM changes. You said that you were going to vote Labour in the last general election. You were hoping they'd bring back the optimism into British life. What do you make of what you've seen over the last few days?
Yes, I think that there's a couple of things. One is, on social media, I've been very eviscerating over the last couple of days about what is happening because there's all this attention in the media about what's happening in UK politics, and it's absolute navel-gazing. As I said, the main show in town is what's happening between the United States and China. But for some reason, our politics has just got further and further into the gutters where we're always talking about this minutiae detail of who's stabbing who in the back. And I saw that, as you rightly pointed out, back in 2022 during those final days of the Boris Johnson administration. And whenever the rot sets in, I don't think there's any way back. Like once people smell blood, everyone starts kind of descending on the body. And it's very unfortunate because ultimately it's the British people, it's us, the 68 million people that will pay for the ongoing political turmoil that the country's been going through for the last decade.
Mark, thanks so much. Good to talk to you. Mark Logan, former Conservative MP from Ballymena.